In this video, I will be showing how to perform a trend analysis in Tableau. To start off with, let's open up a text file. The text file in this case being a text file called Mannheim.csv. Once you go ahead and open Mannheim.csv, you can see some information in the data tab associated with Mannheim. It has a couple of different columns: model, price, miles, and sale. We have the first 100 rows shown up out of 819 different rows. You're seeing the first 100 rows. This data set is a pretty simple data set. It is about a company that's trying to analyze its sales data, trying to make a determination about how to sell cars. There are different models of cars, X, Y, and Z, the price at which the car was sold, the mileage on the car when it was sold, and how the car was sold, whether it was sold at auction or whether it was sold online. Now, the company in this case is trying to make a determination about whether they should sell cars at auction or whether they should sell cars online. To start off with, when we have a data set like this, we might want to do some exploratory analysis. Exploratory analysis is basically trying to get a sense of the data, trying to understand the story the data is telling us. And so we can do something pretty simple and straightforward. In this case, I'm going to take price and miles, and I'm going to have miles. Actually, I'm going to flip this. I want miles on the x-axis and price on the y-axis. So I'm going to flip the axes. And so I have price on the y-axis and miles on the x-axis. I want to start off by building a simple scatter plot of the observations. In this case, the observations between the price of the car and the miles of the car. And we can see that we have the sum of price and sum of miles displayed over here. To convert this into a scatter plot, I've got to take each of those observations that are measures and make them dimensions. And so I'm going to convert each of those observations into dimensions rather than measures, and I see the following scatter plot. Now, in the following scatter plot, I see each observation, price and miles of the car. Now, one thing to note is there is one observation right here that's kind of out of the ordinary. It's not, when I say out of the ordinary, it's showing me that for this mileage of the car, the price that was obtained was only like 4,500, when it should really be somewhere in this band over here, right? And so I'm going to right click on that observation and I'm going to exclude that observation. And when I exclude that observation, this is the visualization kind of recenters. Now, the first thing to do is to realize that in this visualization, we see something pretty straightforward. We see really three different bands. Now, if you have three different bands, well, what could those potentially correspond to? Those potentially correspond to the model of the car. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the model of the car, that pill, and drop it over the color mark. Whoops, I'm sorry, that was sale. I'm going to remove that. The model of the car and drop it over the color pill. And so we see three different models of the cars, X, Y, and Z, giving us three different bands over here. And so, but we also see the correspondence between price and miles. The greater the miles in the car, the lower the price that you get on the car, right? And we see that this applies to kind of X model cars, Y model cars, and Z model cars. Although Z model cars might be kind of more premium cars, fetching more value, but this same relationship exists across all three, where as the mileage in the car increases, the price of the car goes down. Now, the question we might ask at this point is, well, how much does the price of a car go down for every mile that is put on the car? Well, one of the ways that we can do that is to actually use a trend line to describe the relationship between price and miles. So if you click on the Analytics tab right here, you see a trend line. What we can do is we can drag this trend line onto this visualization. And in this case, we have a variety of different types of trend lines we can add. And so for us, this is a straightforward linear visualization or linear trend line. So drop down to linear. And so we see 3 different trend lines. If you hover over the trend line, you'll get some information about the relationship between price and miles. So if I right click on any of the trend lines and ask it to describe the trend line, we can see for Z model cars, the p-value for miles is significant. That means this is a significant association between price and miles. And for every additional mile on the car, the price goes down by 16 cents. The negative coefficient means that there's a negative relationship between the two. So price is equal to minus 0.16 into miles. So every additional mile reduces the price on the car by 16 cents. And then we have the coordinate on the y-axis, the intercept of the y-axis. So this holds true for Z model cars. You will notice if you hover over it, it holds true for Y model cars as well. And if you hover over X, you will see the relationship is significant, saying that again, this is a significant association. Values of R squared, as you hover over them, tell you how much of the variability of price is explained by miles, right? And so we can see that's a significant number as well. And so one of the things that trend lines allow us to do is it allows us to look at the association between observations and to kind of describe them through the use of regression lines. I'm going to put a kind of name on the sheet over here. I'm going to call this price versus miles by model. So price versus miles by model. I'm going to create another sheet. In the second sheet, I'm going to do something very, very similar. I'm going to replicate this. So I'm going to have miles as columns, price as rows. Again, I'm going to convert them to dimensions, giving me the same observations once again. And I want to remove or going to exclude that outlier observation. Now in this case, let's say the company was trying to analyze how should they sell their cars? Should they sell their cars at auction or versus online? So one of the things I could do is I could actually take the way the car was sold and drop down to color. So we can see that, hey, we now have yellow observations indicating the cars sold online, blue observations indicating the cars were sold at auction. Now a couple of things to notice about this. Notice that there are a lot more cars being sold at auction, which is great, right? But another thing to notice is that the blue observations are clustered when you're looking at mileage below kind of 40K. Most of them below 40, 45K is where you're finding most of the yellow observations. So cars that are sold online typically sell when their mileage on them is less than around 45K. Now, why might this be the case? And so this might actually give you some hints, right? So these kinds of scatter plots allow you to examine human behavior in a way. Think about you purchasing a car. When you purchase a car online, you make some assumptions based on the number of miles on it. And the greater number of miles on it, the more likely you are to want to go and see the car, right? And that's exactly what we see over here. When people purchase cars online, they don't purchase high mileage cars, but they in fact purchase low mileage cars. And we can see that in this visualization right here. Let's add a trend line and see what we find over here. If we add a linear trend line, we see the following two lines. Now, let's highlight one of these lines. Now, if you take a look at one of these lines, you'll see it has a very low R square, but it also has an insignificant p-value. The p-value is not significant. It's not less than 0.05, right? Allowing us to think that this trend line is not significant. Let's go to the blue trend line. Now, the blue trend line is in fact significant. So there is this association, but this association between price and miles is very, very small. The R square is 0.02. So what is potentially going on over here? One of the things that potentially going on over here is that there is another kind of piece of information that we are lacking in this visualization. And that piece of information has to do with the model of the car. I'm going to take the model pill right before price. And so I have built this association between price and miles, but segmented for every model of the car. Now let's take a look at the association between price and miles. We can see that the yellow and the blue lines are both significant, right? So taking a look at this for X model cars, we can see that just hovering over this, cars sold at auction fetch a greater premium than cars sold online fetch a greater premium than cars sold at auction. In fact, we can see that. So what do we actually see? We see that the effect of miles on the price of the car is smaller if the car is sold online, right? And so for cars sold online, the additional mile on the car reduces the price of the car by 4 cents. But if that same car was sold at auction, that additional mile is going to cost 6 additional cents. So the car loses 10 cents instead of 4 cents, right? For every additional mile for X model cars. And this holds true for Y and Z model cars as well, right? And so trend lines allow us to look at the relationships between different pieces of continuous data. This concludes this discussion of adding trend lines to Tableau workbooks. In this case, I'm going to change the name of the sheet, price versus miles by sale. Thank you very much.